Survival is not for the weak. Then watch us.
Alien Instructor said, "No weapons in combat." He replied, "I was born with them." HFY Sci-Fi story introduction. The combat arena fell silent. 3,000 cadets from 57 species watched from the towering observation decks. At the center stood a single human. Instructor Vecthar clicked his mandibles in irritation. The towering reptilian officer had spent 2 decades training elite soldiers for the Galactic Defense Coalition, and humans were rapidly becoming his least favorite species. Too reckless, too unpredictable, too fond of breaking rules. The human standing before him was apparently the worst of them all. "Cadet Mason Cole," Vecthar growled. "Present, sir. You have violated Academy regulations 7 times this month." Mason smiled. "Only 7?" Laughter erupted among the spectators. Vecthar's eyes narrowed. Today he would finally humble the human. Combat Trial 3. A massive holographic display illuminated above the arena, weaponless survival exercise. The crowd immediately understood: no rifles, no blades, no armor, no technology, no equipment. Pure survival. Against predators. Vecthar folded his arms. "Today, Cadet Cole, you will learn that without your weapons, humans are nothing." The arena grew quiet. Mason tilted his head. Then he smiled. The smile bothered Vecthar a lot. The human looked almost excited. "Nothing?" Mason asked. "Correct." The instructor pointed toward the arena gates. 6. "Enter." Mason stretched casually, cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, then spoke words that would later become legendary throughout the galaxy. "Sir, yes, you seem to misunderstand something." Vecthar frowned. "What?" Mason's grin widened. "I wasn't issued my weapons." The crowd looked confused. The instructor looked annoyed. "What nonsense are you speaking?" Mason slowly raised both hands, flexed his fingers, then pointed at himself. "I was born with them." The audience erupted into laughter. Vecthar shook his head. Arrogance. Mason simply walked into the arena. The gates slammed shut behind him. 3 minutes later, nobody was laughing anymore. Chapter 1. The lesson. The combat arena covered nearly 5 square kilometers, artificial forests, rock formations, rivers, caves. Every environment designed to replicate hostile worlds. Today, it contained 6 predators, each selected specifically to overwhelm an unarmed combatant. The first was a Kral beast, 4 meters tall, muscles like living armor, capable of crushing steel. The second and third were razor stalkers, pack hunters, fast enough to outrun hover vehicles. The remaining 3 were night talons, creatures famous for killing armed soldiers. The crowd watched eagerly. Many expected the human to last perhaps 2 minutes, 5 if he got lucky. A warning horn sounded. The hunt began. Mason stood in the middle of a clearing, hands in his pockets. The predators spread outward, circling, studying, waiting. Vecthar smirked. Finally, reality would teach the human humility. Then something strange happened. The Kral beast stopped. The giant predator stared at Mason. Mason stared back. Neither moved. The creature snorted, took a step backward. Vecthar blinked. Predators didn't retreat, especially not Kral beasts, the crowd murmured. Mason remained perfectly still. Then the beast charged. Like an avalanche, like a freight train, like death, the audience gasped. Impact seemed inevitable. Instead, Mason moved. 1 step, that was all. 1 tiny shift. The monster missed completely. The human grabbed its arm, used its momentum, twisted. The beast flew. Actually flew. 400 kilograms of muscle launched through the air. It crashed into a boulder. The rock exploded. Silence filled the arena. Thousands of jaws dropped. Vecthar stared. "What?" A nearby instructor checked the replay, then checked it again, then again. No technology detected. Impossible. The replay disagreed. The human had simply used leverage, timing, technique. The beast struggled to stand. Mason waited politely. "Again?" he asked. The predator ran not toward him. Away from him, the audience exploded with disbelief. The first predator had quit. Chapter 2. Human Evolution. The remaining hunters attacked together. Razor stalkers from both sides. Night talons from above. The crowd leaned forward. Now things became serious. Even elite soldiers struggled against multiple attackers. Mason exhaled slowly, for the first time. He looked focused. The first razor stalker lunged. Mason ducked, the second attacked. He sidestepped. A claw missed his face by millimeters. The spectators couldn't follow his movements. He seemed to flow. Like water, no wasted energy, no panic, just precision. A night talon descended. Its talons could pierce combat armor. Mason caught its wrist, spun. Used the creature as a projectile, the flying predator collided with another. Both crashed into the ground. The crowd erupted. "What species does that?" a professor nearby answered. "Humans." Nobody liked that answer. The fight continued 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. The predators grew exhausted. Mason barely seemed winded. Finally, Vector spoke. Why isn't he slowing down? The Academy's biology expert hesitated, then sighed. Because humans evolved as persistence hunters. What does that mean? It means they chase things. Most species chase prey. The scientist shook her head. No. Her voice became uneasy. You don't understand. A holographic chart appeared. Most predators sprint. She pointed to the graph. Humans walk. Silence, the crowd looked confused. Walk? Yes, the scientist swallowed. They walk after prey. That's absurd. It is. She enlarged the data. Until you realize they can do it for days. The arena became quiet, very quiet. The scientist continued. Imagine being hunted by something that never stops. Nobody spoke. Something that follows your tracks. Silence. Something that doesn't get tired. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Something that smiles when you run. The implications settled over the arena like a cold fog. Vector slowly looked toward Mason. The human was currently jogging after a terrified predator. Not because he needed to. Because he found it amusing. The instructor suddenly felt less confident. Chapter 3. The truth about human weapons trial ended with 6 unconscious predators. Mason wasn't injured, not even slightly. The audience stood in stunned silence. Vector descended into the arena personally. This proves nothing, Mason smiled. Oh, physical advantages are irrelevant, the instructor gestured angrily. Weapons changed warfare. True, without weapons humans are weak. Mason raised an eyebrow. You still don't get it. The instructor's patience evaporated. Then explain. The human looked around the arena, at thousands of spectators, at dozens of instructors, at species from every corner of known space. Then he asked a simple question. What's a weapon? Nobody answered. Mason continued. A weapon is something that lets you apply force. Vector nodded. Correct. The human pointed toward his eyes. Depth of perception, then his ears. Hearing, then his hands. Fine motor control, then his legs. Endurance, then his brain, problem-solving. The audience listened carefully. Mason spread his arms. Humans spent millions of years turning our entire bodies into survival machines. He pointed toward a nearby alien cadet. What happens if someone throws a rock at your head? The cadet blinked. I dodge. Exactly. Mason grinned. Congratulations. The cadet frowned. What? Your brain became a weapon. A few spectators laughed, then realized he wasn't joking. The laughter stopped. Because suddenly they understood. Humans didn't think of weapons the same way other species did. For most species, weapons were tools. For humans, weapons were extensions. Their bodies came first. Everything else came later. And that realization was deeply unsettling. Chapter 4. The challenge Vector refused to accept defeat. He demanded another trial. A more difficult one. A dangerous one. The Academy director approved. The following day, the entire station gathered to watch, attendance records shattered. News agencies arrived, military observers appeared, even admirals tuned in. The challenge was simple. One human, no equipment, against 12 elite combat drones, military grade, designed to eliminate insurgents. The betting pools heavily favored the drones. Vector smiled for the first time in days. Finally, something that couldn't be intimidated, the gates opened, the drones emerged. Cold, precise, merciless. Mason cracked his knuckles. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1 combat. The first drone fired stun rounds. Mason moved before the shots arrived. The audience gasped. The second drone attacked from behind. He ducked, the third lunged. He jumped. The fourth fired. He rolled, the crowd watched in disbelief. It looked less like combat and more like a dance. A terrifying dance. Within 30 seconds, 3 drones were disabled. Within 1 minute, 6 were down. Within 3 minutes, only 1 remained. The final drone activated combat analysis mode, millions of calculations per second, predictive algorithms, advanced targeting. The machine studied Mason, then froze. The audience frowned. What happened? An engineer checked the data. His face turned pale. The drone cannot predict him. Why? The engineer swallowed. Because the human keeps changing strategies. Silence. He isn't following a pattern. The drone's processor overloaded. Not from damage, from uncertainty. Mason walked over, tapped it gently. The machine shut down. The arena exploded with cheers. Chapter 5. The confession that evening, Vector requested a private meeting. Mason arrived. The instructor looked exhausted. Olders, somehow. Sit. Mason complied. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Vector sighed. I owe you an apology. The human blinked. That was unexpected. For what? The instructor looked out the observation window. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. I misunderstood humanity. Mason remained silent. Vector continued. I thought your strength came from technology. He shook his head. I thought your weapons made you dangerous. The human smiled faintly. And now? The instructor laughed bitterly. Now I understand the truth. He turned, met Mason's eyes. The weapons are merely accessories. Mason chuckled. Pretty much. The alien stared at him. No. His voice became serious. You don't understand how frightening that sounds to everyone else. The human laughed. The instructor didn't. That made Mason stop laughing. Vector leaned forward. Every species in this galaxy evolved one advantage. Strength. He counted on one claw. Speed. Another claw. Armor. Another. Venom. Another. Then he pointed directly at Mason. Humans evolved adaptability. Silence, the word lingered. Adaptability, the most dangerous trait imaginable. Because it meant humans never stopped improving, never stopped learning, never stopped finding new ways to win. The instructor slowly nodded. You weren't born with claws. No. You weren't born with armor. No. You weren't born with venom. No, Vector exhaled. But somehow you became more dangerous than species that were. Mason smiled. That's humanity. Epilogue. The praise that spread across the galaxy years later. The story became famous. Military academies taught it. Fleet commanders quoted it. Enemy war planners feared it. Whenever a species underestimated humans, someone would repeat the lesson, not because humans were the strongest, not because they were the fastest, not because they possessed the greatest technology, but because they possessed something rarer. The ability to turn weakness into strength, fear into courage, failure into experience, and obstacles into opportunities. The official Academy report ended with a single line from Instructor Vector himself. A warning to every future generation. Never ask whether a human is armed. Ask whether the human has decided to fight. Because if the answer was yes, the weapon was already present. And it had been born that way.